It started with a whisper in the courtroom. But within minutes, that whisper turned into an eruption that shook the entire industry. Diddy, known for decades as hip-hop royalty, stood frozen as Kid Cudi calmly uttered the words that would stop everyone cold. My car was firebombed. And it wasn't random. It was because of Cassie. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Jaws dropped. Was Kid Cudi implying that Diddy had something to do with a literal act of violence? And over Cassie, the woman at the center of so many rumors, heartbreaks, and industry betrayals. Court officers exchanged nervous glances. Cameras caught Diddy gripping the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. He wasn't just angry, he was unhinged. And what Kid Cudi said next had the entire courtroom in stunned silence. But this wasn't just another celebrity feud. This was deeper, darker, and far more dangerous than anyone expected. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. Stay with us, because what's coming next is a series of shocking revelations, twisted alliances, and a secret that could bring down more than just a music mogul. You won't believe what really happened behind the scenes. For years, the music industry whispered about the strange tension between Diddy and Kid Cudi, two powerhouse figures who rarely crossed paths publicly, but always seemed to orbit the same chaotic circles. While Diddy reigned from his empire built on bad boy records and a long legacy of lavish living, Kid Cudi carved a lane of his own. Raw, emotional, unpredictable, and dangerously honest. But their paths collided the moment Cassie entered the equation. Cassie, the woman who once stood beside Diddy at red carpets, music videos, and luxury events, had long been considered untouchable. Their relationship, though filled with public smiles, was always surrounded by quiet rumors, control, manipulation, jealousy, even fear. But few knew that behind the scenes, Cassie had reached out to someone unexpected for support. Kid Cudi. Sources close to the situation say Cassie and Cudi had developed a discreet friendship years ago, long before she ever dared to walk away from Diddy's shadow. He was one of the few people who actually listened. A former stylist claimed she trusted him more than she ever trusted Diddy. And that trust didn't go unnoticed. Insiders whispered that Diddy viewed Cudi's connection to Cassie as a betrayal, a silent, invisible threat to the image he worked so hard to maintain. Even if Cudi wasn't trying to take Cassie, the mere idea of her confiding in another powerful man set something dangerous into motion. But things escalated after Cassie officially left Diddy. Almost overnight, her life changed. Freedom, but not peace. Strange messages. Cars following her at night. Hers left open in her apartment. Security footage mysteriously deleted. She stayed quiet, but her inner circle didn't. And that's when the unthinkable happened. One night, Kid Cudi's car, a customized Audi R8 worth over $160,000, was found engulfed in flames in the driveway of his Los Angeles home. Authorities ruled it suspicious, but no suspects were named. Cudi himself refused to comment until now, and the timing of his testimony was no coincidence. With Cassie's recent legal battles making headlines and Diddy's name repeatedly mentioned in explosive accusations, Kid Cudi showed up to court, calm and composed, with one goal: tell the truth. But this wasn't just about a car. It was about revenge, fear, and power. There were threats, Cudi told the court. Warnings. People showing up where they shouldn't be. Calls from blocked numbers. And then my car was bombed. Not keyed, not vandalized. Bombed. The courtroom fell silent. But even as the judge urged decorum, you could feel the air shift. And that's when Diddy snapped from his seat. He muttered something under his breath, loud enough for reporters in the second row to catch it. Something about liars and paying the price. The bailiff took a step forward. Cassie, seated on the far left of the room, refused to make eye contact. And Kid Cudi, he just stared forward as if he'd been waiting for this moment for years. This wasn't about music, or fame, or ego. This was personal. And if what sources are saying is true, then the firebombing was only one part of a much deeper, darker plan. But what came next would flip the courtroom and the entire internet upside down. Because Kid Cudi didn't just testify about the past, he hinted that someone else, someone close to Cassie, may have been the real target all along. And if that's true, it means the next explosion won't be metaphorical, just as everyone tried to catch their breath from Cudi's testimony. The judge called for a brief recess. But the tension in that courtroom wasn't taking a break. Diddy looked like a man on the edge. Arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes locked on Kid Cudi, like he could burn holes through his skull. It wasn't just disbelief. It was rage. And underneath that rage, fear. Because deep down, he knew what was coming next. As the court resumed, Kid Cudi returned to the witness stand. And this time, he wasn't just talking about a car. He pulled out a sealed envelope, handed over by his attorney, and calmly placed it on the stand. "What's in there?" the judge asked. "CUD, I didn't blink. Proof." The courtroom went dead silent. "It's a series of text messages," he explained, sent to a burner phone that was traced back to an associate connected to Sean Combs. He paused. One of those messages includes a chilling warning. "Stay out of her business or you'll be next." Immediately, murmurs erupted across the courtroom. The judge banged his gavel, trying to maintain control, but the damage was done. Every single person in that room now believed this wasn't just some celebrity feud. It was something darker, something coordinated, and it was about to get worse. Within the messages were time-stamped threats, coded names, and most disturbingly, a photo, a grainy still image from what appeared to be a security camera feed. A man in a hoodie, crouching near a parked Audi, holding what looked like an incendiary device. Kid Cudi looked at the image once more before turning to the courtroom. "Believe this was meant to scare me into silence," he said, voice steady. But it had the opposite effect. The judge took a long breath before calling for the image to be sealed from public release. But it was already too late. As soon as the court took another recess, someone leaked the details to a gossip blog. Within minutes, hashtags like #DiddyCourtMeltdown and #CUDIBombPlot were trending. And then the twist no one saw coming. Cassie's name popped up again, not in testimony. Not from Cudi, but from a surprise witness. A former security guard who used to work for Bad Boy Records. A man who claimed he was let go after refusing to follow certain orders that he described as highly unethical and dangerous. His testimony hit like a sledgehammer. He described a late-night meeting at a downtown Los Angeles bar in early 2022. Present at that meeting, Diddy, 2 unnamed associates, and a conversation about protecting the image at any cost. He said Cassie was starting to talk to people. The witness explained that she was saying things that couldn't go public, and that if she couldn't be silenced, those around her could be made an example. The courtroom was stunned. The prosecution froze. Even the judge's hand trembled as he wrote notes. And Diddy. He stood up suddenly and shouted, "This is a damn lie." Officers rushed in, restraining him before the outburst escalated. It was chaos. Cassie visibly trembled, tears rolling down her cheek as she whispered something to her attorney. And then, a collective gasp from the back of the courtroom because someone had just walked in unannounced. Unexpected and unmistakable. Andre Harwell, a well-known music executive who had gone underground after allegedly being caught up in a similar industry scandal 2 years ago, stepped forward. His statement, chilling. "I'm not here to testify," he said. "I'm here to warn." Everyone leaned forward. "This goes way beyond Cassie. Way beyond Cudi. You're dealing with something a lot of people spent a lot of money to bury. And if this keeps coming out, people are going to start disappearing." For a moment, no one even breathed. The judge immediately ordered the courtroom cleared and called a private session. But the internet was already exploding on Twitter. Screenshots of Cudi's alleged texts were circulating. On Instagram, Cassie's cryptic story post, just a single candle emoji, was being interpreted as a silent cry for help. And on TikTok, fans were breaking down video clips of Diddy's breakdown in court, analyzing his body language frame by frame. And then came the first fake insider leak. An anonymous Reddit user claiming to be a former employee of one of Diddy's investment firms. The post read, "They used to talk in code. When Cassie left, things got dark. There were meetings. One was about how to eliminate distractions. I didn't understand at the time. Now I do. People were losing their minds. And the worst part, we weren't even close to the final bombshell. Because just as reporters were rushing to file their stories and news outlets scrambled for headlines, a new piece of evidence emerged. Security footage, and this time, it showed someone else entirely at the scene of the firebombing. Not Diddy. Not his usual inner circle, but someone who was never supposed to be involved. Someone tied directly to Cassie's family. When that video surfaced, it changed everything. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. A tall figure in a black hoodie, nervously pacing near Kid Cudi's driveway just minutes before the firebombing. At first glance, it seemed like another hired goon, just another disposable pawn in a celebrity cover-up. But when zoomed in and enhanced, the internet erupted, because the man in that video bore a striking resemblance to Cassie's younger brother. A person who had never been mentioned publicly in connection to any of this social media, lit up like wildfire. Within moments, #CassieBrother was trending alongside #CUDI car bomb. Speculation ran wild. Had Cassie's own family been manipulated into this? Was someone close to her working both sides? And then in a turn no one predicted, Cassie's brother posted an Instagram story that sent shockwaves through the fan base. A black screen with white text. They told me it was a prank. They told me it was just to scare him. No name, no context, no denial. But to fans and insiders, it was a confession hiding in plain sight. Back in court, reporters were scrambling to validate the footage. But the internet had already declared it real. TikTok detectives were matching the hoodie design too, an outfit Cassie's brother had worn in an old tagged photo. Others were comparing walking, posture, height, and build. And behind closed doors, prosecution began building a new theory. What if the firebombing wasn't just an intimidation tactic? What if it was a setup designed to implicate Diddy? While someone else pulled the strings, the narrative began shifting. Suddenly, the spotlight on Diddy grew even hotter. But also murkier. Was he the mastermind? Or a scapegoat in a power game that reached higher than anyone had imagined? And that's when the second leak happened. An anonymous source sent a sealed envelope to multiple news outlets containing what appeared to be audio recordings, muffled voices, crackling fire in the background, and a chilling phrase caught. On tape, it's done. Car lit, he'll shut up now. No names. But one voice sounded eerily like a known music industry fixer. Someone who once worked with Diddy's management team, before disappearing from public view in 2021. The internet exploded again. Reddit threads broke down the recording's waveform to compare voices. YouTube channels ran 30-minute breakdowns comparing it to old interviews. Fans began digging through Cassie's family photos. Conspiracy theories flourished. Was Cassie orchestrating a silent rebellion against her former abuser? Was Kid Cudi, unknowingly, used as bait? Or was this part of something bigger? A secret war between industry elites that had finally boiled over into public court. One Twitter user summed it up perfectly. This isn't a trial. This is the unraveling of a whole damn empire. And just when things couldn't get crazier, Usher posted on X, formerly Twitter, the R&B legend who'd had his own public falling out with Diddy years ago tweeted a single fire emoji, followed by a shrugging GIF. Cryptic, sarcastic, and instantly viral. People begged him to clarify. Was he suggesting he knew? Was it about the firebombing? About Cassie? About Kid Cudi? And then, as if timed for maximum chaos, Kid Cudi posted a photo of his burned-out Audi. The caption, "Truth can't be silenced forever." Meanwhile, court was in session again, and a forensic tech expert testified that the security camera footage was genuine, unaltered, time-stamped, no deepfakes, no edits. The man in the hoodie was real, and the timeline, damning. The footage placed him at Cudi's home just 7 minutes before the car erupted in flames. The recordings, if authenticated, would confirm coordination. But then came the jaw-dropper.a leaked email thread between a private security firm and an unnamed executive. Revealed payment transfers labeled as event management and incident coverage. One of those emails included a subject line that read, "Reunite at Cudi's, confirmed." The judge ordered an immediate investigation into potential tampering. But public didn't care. They were already locked in. Fans posted side-by-side breakdowns of Cassie's emotional decline during her Diddy years, and Cudi's mysterious social media silence during the months after the firebombing. Memes, edits, commentaries, everyone had an opinion. But buried in the chaos, something darker was brewing because someone had hacked into an old, forgotten Twitter account, allegedly once used by Diddy's team for PR back in 2015. And from that account, suddenly active again after 8 years of silence, came a single post. "The wrong people are speaking. The right ones better stay quiet." It's within 2 minutes. The account was deleted, but the screenshot had already gone viral. And now, fans weren't just talking about justice. They were talking about fear. Who else was involved? Who else knew? How many more secrets were still buried? Because if Kid Cudi's car really was firebombed as a warning, what else were they willing to do? And to who? As courtroom chaos spilled into public hysteria, the internet transformed into a digital war zone. Social media feeds were flooded with theories, anger, and war, and utter disbelief. Fans, insiders, and even rival celebrities couldn't stay silent, and the battle lines were drawn. Twitter exploded. "If Kid Cudi's telling the truth, Diddy's career is done," wrote one user, their post racking up over 150K likes. In less than an hour, another posted a side-by-side video, one clip of Diddy preaching about black excellence at a 2020 awards show, and the other, a slowed-down frame of him allegedly reacting to Cudi's testimony with pure rage. The caption, "We were praising a monster." Hashtag Diddy exposed. Hashtag justice for Cudi. Hashtag Cassie knew. Hashtag Firebombed Gate. Hashtag hip hop cover up. All 5 were trending simultaneously, dominating every major platform. Over on Instagram, Cassie finally broke her silence. In a carefully curated black and white video, she sat in silence while a voiceover, not hers, read a poem about healing, fear, and fires that cleanse the soul. The message, haunting and mysterious. But not everyone was supportive. A few die-hard Diddy loyalists, including anonymous accounts claiming to be from within the bad boy camp, began spreading alternative facts. One viral post insisted that the footage was staged. The recordings were AI-generated, and that Cudi was using trauma for clout. The backlash was swift. TikTokers started dissecting interviews, tracking emotional inconsistencies, and pulling receipts from old industry beefs. One creator found an interview from 2013 where Diddy casually joked about blowing up someone's studio after an artist refused to sign. It was meant to be funny back then. Now, it sounded like a confession. The streets of LA too began, echoing the drama. Murals that once featured Diddy's face were spray-painted overnight. One in particular, showing his 90s-era portrait, now had the word "liar" graffitied across the bottom. Radio stations stopped playing his music. Nightclubs reportedly pulled tracks from rotation. And on The Breakfast Club, Charlemagne, the God, broke his silence live on air. "I defended Diddy for years. Now I feel like a damn fool. If even half of what's being said is true, He doesn't deserve a platform. He deserves prison. Meanwhile, celebrities who had long remained quiet began speaking up carefully. But clearly, Erykah Badu tweeted, "Truth don't need a stage. It walks in silence and still shakes the room." Kalani went live and said, "I used to dream about working with Diddy. Not anymore. Protect Kid Cudi at all costs." And in came Tyler, the creator, who rarely weighs in on industry beefs, tweeting a single emoji. The meaning? Unmistakable. But things turned even more chaotic when footage from a private Hollywood party leaked online. In it, two A-list producers were caught on a hot mic discussing the trial. "Man, if Cudi wins this, it's gonna open the floodgates." One said, "Yeah, everyone's got dirt on Diddy." They just never thought anyone had the balls to say it out loud. Within minutes, this clip was everywhere. The industry wasn't just reacting, it was bracing. Because what started as one man's emotional testimony had now unraveled into a full-blown war. Not just over power, but over truth itself. Music, blogs, began publishing retrospectives of Diddy's entire career, re-examining every lawsuit, every NDA, every silenced voice. News anchors debated whether this case would change the entertainment industry forever. And in a wild twist, a former FBI agent who once investigated music label racketeering in the early 2000s appeared on CNN, stating, "I always believed there was more to these stories. Just never thought we'd see it come to light like this." The fear was real, but so was the hope. Fans began tweeting support threads for Cassie and Cudi, using the hashtags #WeBelieveYou and #TruthWillBurn. Others called for arrests, for justice, or retribution. But above all, they wanted more details, more leaks, more accountability, and the world knew this wasn't over. In fact, the most shocking chapter hadn't even begun yet. Just when the world thought it had, heard every jaw-dropping detail, one final twist ripped through the courtroom, and it didn't come from Cudi, Cassie, or even Diddy. It came from an anonymous whistleblower, claiming to be a former assistant to one of Diddy's top attorneys. The court was already spiraling. Reporters practically camped out on the courthouse steps, celebrities avoiding public appearances, fans begging for updates by the hour. But this bombshell didn't care about timing, because what this whistleblower submitted was a signed affidavit with one line that changed everything. Cassie was never the real target. It was Kid Cudi from the beginning. The revelation sent shockwaves across every corner of the internet. The affidavit detailed that Diddy allegedly felt threatened by Cudi's increasing influence in the industry, especially after rumors spread that Cudi had been helping multiple artists leave toxic management deals tied back to Diddy's label network. And Cassie, according to this document, she was used as the emotional bait. The goal: isolate Cudi, intimidate him, erase his credibility before he could pull more artists away from the empire. Suddenly, the firebombing wasn't just revenge, it was preemptive warfare. But that wasn't all, because the affidavit referenced an unreleased audio file, one that had allegedly been buried deep within a private cloud server labeled legal fallback. The whistleblower claimed the file contained an off-the-record strategy session between Diddy's crisis team, openly discussing neutralizing potential threats through controlled chaos. And the most haunting part, a quote attributed directly to Diddy himself: "You don't scare a man like Cudi with words. You show him how easily fire spreads." The courtroom fell silent. Cudi, seated beside his legal team, didn't even flinch. He just stared forward, eyes burning with something colder than anger. Resolve. Cudi once again broke down in tears. But Diddy, he sat still, almost like he knew. This was the moment everything finally collapsed. But it didn't stop there, because that same afternoon, mysterious USB drive was delivered to 3 major media outlets. Its contents: time-stamped audio logs, payment records to third-party security consultants, and an unreleased voicemail allegedly from a private number. traced back to a burner phone used by Diddy's manager in 2021. In the voicemail, a voice believed to be Diddy says, "I told you to scare him, not leave evidence. Clean this up." Social media instantly fractured. People who once defended Diddy now tweeted apologies. Fan pages deactivated overnight. His brand partnerships terminated. Streaming platforms began scrubbing his name from playlists, and yet, even as the case seemed airtight, one final twist threw everything into chaos again. A sealed folder was discovered in Cassie's old storage unit by a cleaning crew. Marked only with the letters JC inside were printed emails, flight logs, and several non-disclosure agreements, signed by people no one had ever mentioned. But one name stood out. A powerful, well-connected figure, someone with ties to government contracts and music industry lobbying. Someone who, if exposed, could make this more than a celebrity scandal. This could become a political firestorm. The judge called an emergency recess. Court was adjourned indefinitely. And outside, helicopters hovered as night fell. Kid Cudi exited the courthouse in silence. He turned to the cameras and said just one line, "This isn't about me anymore." And with that, he vanished into a waiting black SUV. No further comment, no social media post, just silence. But that silence, louder than ever. And now the world waits, because this story isn't over. Not even close, in fact. The next explosion might not just be metaphorical now. That the courtroom has fallen silent, and the internet is on fire. One thing is clear. This story is far from over. What started with a single testimony has spiraled into a full-blown expose of the music industry's darkest secrets. From firebombed cars and burner phones, to leaked voicemails and political ties, we're no longer talking about just Cassie or Kid Cudi. We're talking about the fall of an empire. But here's the thing. You haven't heard the last twist. You haven't seen the biggest reveal. You haven't even met the real puppet masters pulling strings behind the scenes. So here's what you need to do. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Diddy is behind it all? Or is someone else playing both sides? Smash that like button if you're ready for the truth to finally come out, no matter who it exposes. And most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because in the next episode, we're revealing what's inside the JC folder. And trust us, it's going to change everything. And before you go, ask yourself this. If someone like Kid Cudi with fame, money, and fans can be targeted this way, what happens to the people who don't have a platform? Think about that. Because the fire isn't out yet. It's just getting started. Stay tuned. This is only chapter 1.